Everyone thought it was a log, but when it was pulled up, nobody was ready to see it. Many of us had a dream as a child of becoming an archaeologist, a world traveler, or even a soldier. Not only men, but an increasing number of women were interested in the military and corresponding vocational training in this field. As children, we created secret hiding places in our backyards, or those of our neighbors, played treasure hunters, and imagined exciting adventures. Even today, hidden treasures and items from the war such as munitions, ships, and other artifacts are found on land and underwater. The finders are only sometimes experts, but sometimes people stumble upon them unexpectedly. Unfortunately, tremendous and significant discoveries are rarely made, and most often it happens by pure chance. And sometimes these discoveries are so unique that they reveal the history of the time. For generations to come, they will benefit from them, and they will be able to get an accurate idea of what it was like at that time. Today's video is about precisely such a case. Remnants from the Second World War. It's been over 75 years since the end of World War II, but the memories of those terrible times are still present in our previous generations. World War II is undoubtedly one of the saddest, most fascinating, and most studied events in human history. It was supposed to be the war to end all wars. People could not imagine why another war had to be fought or how one could ever amount to as much destruction as was seen from 1939 to 1945. Items from that era are sought-after collectibles for many, especially regarding the military equipment used. After all, there are still many veterans worldwide, and weapons and war equipment are still found in various parts of the world today. A part of contemporary history was found. But the following case is so unique that it amazed even longtime experts in the field. The whole thing happened near a small Russian village where war actions once took place. A diver came across a sunken tank from World War II at the bottom of the Don River. He probably thought at first that his eyes were playing tricks on him, and at first thought it was a simple tree trunk. However, when he approached the gun, he could hardly believe it. It was not just any tank, but a scarce Soviet combat vehicle of the type T-3476, produced in numbers ranging from 1,000 to a maximum of 15,000 units. The T-34 was a medium tank of Soviet production. It was built from 1940 to 1958, and it was used by the Red Army mainly in the German-Soviet War. It's considered the most famous Soviet tank of the war and hit the Wehrmacht like a monster. A real stroke of luck that the tank was not found on dry land. Currently, it is the only well-preserved copy. The discovery was made at a depth of 7 meters and was in perfect condition. Due to some heavy erosion activity, the body armor would not have been in such good shape compared to if it had been dry. Thus, it was a proper stroke of luck in more than one way. Fortunately, the diver immediately informed the authorities and the military, who then took care of all the case details. After all, it could not be ruled out that a degree of danger could still emanate from the tank. A significant challenge for rescuers. The tank was pulled out by an armored recovery vehicle, but it was no easy task. The tank weighed about 30 tons and was 23 feet below the water's surface. Experts assume that the combat vehicle must have sunk during transport across the Don River, most likely in connection with a temporary bridge. Pontoons used in such operations were discovered together with it. Besides the pontoons, other sunken military artifacts could also be found nearby, including transport vehicles and small vessels. However, the experts did not remove the tank immediately, as it could not be ruled out that it also contained the remains of Russian soldiers. In addition, on the warm spring day in April, numerous onlookers had already gathered around the recovery team, watching the removal process with a curious gaze. The onlookers were all stunned as they watched this historic moment. Hours passed for the experts to partially remove the enormous metal object from the murky water. They pulled out their cell phones to snap photos and were excited to witness such a thing. The men continued to peel away the layers of mud as their energy dwindled while they wiped the sweat from their foreheads. With one last powerful tug, it was finally out. Everyone was silent as they watched the metal giant roll out of the lake, struggling with the heavy mud and gushing against the villagers. None of them could believe the piece of history that had been recovered. But what was a war tank doing here, and what should be done with it now? What should happen to the tank now? Military enthusiasts hoped to restore the World War II tank after it had lain for decades in the bottom of the river in Voronezh Oblast in southwestern Russia. It is believed that the tank was manufactured at the Stalingrad tractor plant, which was later the stage of a fierce battle. After its restoration, the tank will remain in Patriot Park in Moscow Oblast in western Russia. Patriot Park is an amusement park located in Kubinka, west of Moscow. It is a popular destination for families from the capital. The Russian Ministry of Defense is said to have invested around 300 million euros in constructing this amusement park. Tank shows and demonstrations of weapons are the main attractions. There's even a church on the site which symbolizes the close relationship between Orthodoxy and the military in today's Russia. Anatoly Kallenberg, a Patriot Park official, said, "If the tank were to be restored externally, it would not be difficult and would not take much time, as fortunately it remained in excellent condition. However, if we start restoring it to operational condition, it will take more time. I hope we can get it back to running condition." What made this tank so special? This combat vehicle was characterized mainly by its excellent design and enormous robustness against the penetrating effect of shells. A 76.2 millimeter, later 85 millimeter gun with a long barrel and substantial muzzle velocity in combination with a 500 horsepower diesel engine and a safe running gear ensured that this tank was far superior to the German designs. This tank combined modern ideas into an advanced fighting machine. It was the first tank to combine firepower with armor protection. It also proved to be highly maneuverable and reliable. Thus, any German tank in the same weight class could not compete with this beast. Only the much heavier types, such as the Panther and Tiger, could score as an effective battlefield response for the Germans. Among the Soviet forces, the T-34 was considered the standard tank. Important features of the T-34 at a glance: it had space for a crew of 4. It weighed 26.5 tons. It was 6.68 meters in length, 3 meters in width, and had a height of 2.45 meters. The armament included a 76.2 millimeter F-34 with 77 rounds and 2 Degtyaru DT 7.62 millimeter MGs. They were powered by a V12 aluminum diesel engine, V2, that reached 500 horsepower. The maximum speed was 53 kilometers per hour. The armor? The turret was 2070 millimeters and the hull 2060. The period of use for this particular tank was 1940 through the present. Undoubtedly, the T-34 was one of the trailblazers of its time because the German tanks were easy prey. In the Battle of Moscow, Dmitry Lavrenenko scored 54 kills with Stalin's weapon. Thus, he is considered the most successful Allied tanker ever. The question rises, why there was no German T-34? Were the Germans too vain for a simple copy? However, the Germans needed to be more complacent to make a simple copy. A technical peculiarity distinguished the T-34 because it had not only the crude and ungainly characteristics, the combat vehicle owed its superior mobility and range to the B-2 engine. While the Germans used Otto engines, the T-34 was equipped with a 12-cylinder V diesel engine with multi-valve technology. The Germans still needed to begin to have a comparable machine. This engine was exceptionally light because these backward Soviets used aluminum alloy castings. However, Germany needed more aluminum, so this method could not be used. The design of the B-2 was considered pioneering. In fact, today's tanks, like the Russian T-90, use an evolution of the old 1939 design. What do you think of this story? Are you interested in tanks in general? As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this fascinating topic in the comments.